A model debuting in Medarot 8, this fairy type is a master of passive aggression against long-range combatants. It is FLY01 Twinkle Star. With a kit of Disturbance, double shoot trap, float legs, and the leg ability of Trap Plus, which buffs heat and cool stat of equipped setup parts when using them on her turn. Now, as a model available in Medarot S's permanent banner, you may take a look at her very dominantly setup-based kit and think this model may not bring too much to the table, and setup skills by themselves are very niche and hard to properly capitalize on. And while you may be correct to a point that passive aggression most certainly isn't the most competitively viable form of combat on the field, this model actually has a rather interesting ace in the hole that, if used right, can shoot her all the way up from common fodder to very dangerous competitive meta. Disturbance on her head is a setup-based trap skill that, once placed on the field, will actively auto-cancel any non-attacking skills that the enemy uses on their side. These non-attacking skills can be anything from support skills to defense skills to even something similar like charging Metaforce to a point 2, or even healing skills. This can be a very nasty detriment on the enemy's side if you can time it right and outrun them, because this guarantees that unless they're going to be using a combat-based form of skill, which is obviously either shooting or melee, they will not be allowed to use their skill at all and effectively waste their turn doing so, trying to brute force the trap away. Shoot trap on both arms is another negative trap that she can place against the enemy team, but instead will check them if they are using shooting skills. And if the opposing side does decide to use a shooting skill on their turn, it will punish them for doing so with some passive-aggressive damage that even is also capable of breaking parts if it can catch it within a certain level of HP. Now, it is not capable of consistent damage, as the trap is only allowed a certain number of times before it expires, but given that she has it on arms, Twinkle Star can honestly reset this trap as many times as she wants, effectively deterring the enemy side from using shooting skills. And, if done correctly, or if the enemy side is specializing in shooting skills, this can effectively put them in a hole, make it a lot easier to put them in the bind and take them out. Float legs does mean that she will have relatively solid coverage across all terrains at A rank across the board, but of course S rank on Cyber, and even though she is rather light in terms of resist stats, that A rank across the board does actually kind of forgive it just a little bit and make her just a little more of a competitive edge on the field. In terms of armor, she is kind of par for the course and expected for female types, with a head of about 3100 HP, arms about 2650 each, and legs at 3200. Not to say that she has a bad HP pool, but she is somewhat squishy, so do exercise some caution if you are going to use any of her parts on the field, because one or two good hits will effectively hose her and make her job as a trapper and passive aggressive master a little trickier to do. In terms of leg stats, she is kind of in that lighter range as mentioned, kind of squishy but not overly terrible either. With mobility of 573, that is kind of par for the course when it comes to float-legged models, so nothing terrible or not to be expected, and we're honestly just kind of spoiled with a lot of boss-type float legs that have really good resist stats and speed. An evade of 1171 actually is pretty good though, as it does mean she will have a pretty solid time dodging or grazing a lot of low success or even mid success attacks to keep her damage as low or controlled as possible. A melee resist of 816 and a shoot resist of 835 are unfortunately pain points for her though, as this does mean that even before any additional bonuses go to her favor, such as power-up chips or terrain mastery or Metarodder bonus, she will be moderately light on armor and take a considerably higher amount of damage incoming for any hits that do land. However, the leg ability of Trap Plus does work to her favor though, as it does mean that anytime she is using Disturbance or Shoot Trap, she will be going progressively faster and noticeably faster, and make it easier for her to outrun things. That being said, as a pure set score, I still do sadly have to rate her at about a 4.5 out of 10. Given that even though Disturbance is an immensely useful skill and it is complemented by her leg ability very nicely, Shoot Trap also is kind of niche and kind of shoots her in the foot to a point, especially given the fact that she can't use Disturbance and Shoot Trap at the same time, since you're only allowed one trap on the field at any given time, and if you replace it, it overwrites whatever trap is on top of it. forcing her to decide you either are not allowed to use non-attacking skills, or you're just not allowed to use shooting skills, and you can't keep both. As mixed parts though, I very easily have to rate her a 7 out of 10 minimum, and that's putting it very lightly, and in some cases arguments could even be made for a 7.5 or even an 8.5 to a point, primarily for the fact that Disturbance, even though people did kind of slept on it for the longest time, is an immensely useful skill that can very easily deter a lot of enemy teams in your favor by stalling them, especially if they have a defender or a healer. This is a very, very handy skill that you can never ever go wrong with having, and it's quite honestly one of the few setup-based skills that I actively encourage you have raised on hand, even if just for the sake of having it. Because alongside First Aid, those two are honestly some of the greatest non-attacking skills you could probably ever pack on a team when it comes to the game as a whole.